Alright, welcome back to the Ram Revival. Last night we pulled this off. We have the O2 sensor in, got the extension harness. We bolted the starter up. When doing that, we found the bolt we dropped, which was awesome. And now we're doing this. And what is this, you might ask? Well, it's the fuel tank. This is about half full. Assuming it's 26 gallon, we'd have 13, 15 gallons, somewhere in that ballpark. And that's going to make it really hard to drop. The reason we're dropping this is twofold. Number one, I'd like to get the fuel out of there. There's anti-siphon devices. That means to get it out, you basically have to pull the pump. If we're pulling the pump to get the fuel out, kind of makes sense to change the pump, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, this isn't like an old car where you got like multiple fuel filters along the frame rail and in the engine bay. You've kind of got like a hydromat, you know, a fuel sock, whatever you want to call it. And there may be one at the top, kind of built in. I'm not 100% sure. That's never really made sense to me, and I've never gotten to look at one either. So you got the filter. Talking to some people, you know, they said, hey, it's probably smart to replace the pump anyway. You know, it's 20 plus years old. So you subscribe to that logic, and the tank has to basically be accessible to get the pump out so you can get to the fuel regardless of what your extreme intents are, right? In our case, we want to get rid of the fuel, we want to change the filter. It makes sense to do the pump. The pump is accessible from the top of the tank, which is up here somewhere. I think you can actually, you're looking at it. And the problem is, like, it's really deep. Okay, like the tank goes all this way down past the drive shaft, basically. That whole length, probably like 12 to 16 inches, is our fuel pump. Okay. And that's not going to fit right here. This is probably like 2.5 to 3 inches. All right, so it's not coming out. There's a point that's immovable, or is it? Two schools of thought. Number one, you raise the bed, or take the bed off, or tilt the bed, or do something with the bed that jacks this side up, or removes it completely, or allows you to slide it back. And that would actually be an option with the gantry crane. The thing is, I can't get the gantry crane back this far in the shop. There is a screen, and we're getting too close to like shelf units and other cars and stuff, and it's not going to happen. In a normal situation, like if we were driving the truck, you know, and the pump went out, I could, you know, get the truck pushed in or something, and yeah, the gantry crane would be awesome. However, since I want to pull the tank and clean it, or at least inspect it. Maybe it's great, I don't know. I'm thinking there's sediment in there. The one real issue I ever had with this truck, aside from the time they did warranty clock spring and screwed stuff up, which is why we never went back to the dealer, is fuel. Sometimes I would go, and it was always after a fill up, okay? And you know, I don't ever fill up when there's a truck there, because that stirs up the sediment, but you don't know when a truck has been there if you don't see it. So I would go, I would fill up, I would take off, and sometimes a truck would sputter or stumble, okay? That all goes back to fuel. And you think, well, I'm going to change the filters, and then you realize, like, oh, there's no filters on the frame rail. This is different than a old school car, right? So it sort of makes sense to drop the tank, pull the pump, remove the fuel, the old fuel. If this was back in the day, the gas wouldn't be great, but it'd probably be fine with the ethanol content in it. Everything's junk. It sucks. Sometimes it's not even good shortly after you buy it, if it was good when it was delivered. I don't like it. Good for boost, bad for everything else pretty much, right? So we want to get that out of there. You got to get the pump out. It makes sense to drop the tank. At that point in time, we can inspect the tank. We can clean the tank. We can do whatever we want to. It'll go back up just fine. Plus, we don't really have the space to get the gantry crane back here. So it makes sense to drop the tank. Now, I've never dropped the tank. It's kind of cumbersome. Let me kind of give you a scope of things, okay? So this is a transfer case. That's a drive shaft. The tank starts here, where the light is, okay? And it goes all the way back there to just in front of our rear axle. That's a pretty considerable span. I don't have a tape measure down here with me, but I'm going to say we're looking at like 3 to 5 feet, okay? Rough estimate there, very generalized. The problem is, as a one-man show, if you drop this down and there's full, I think fuel's like 6 pounds a gallon, something like that. So if we go with 13 gallons, 78 pounds. That's not that bad. You can handle that pretty easy. I don't think the tank itself is going to weigh much. It's plastic. But there's a situation where if I'm underneath this thing and it sort of tilts like this, all of a sudden it becomes like an unloaded barbell, and it's going to ratchet it, and it's going to do bad things, especially to you. So my secret weapon is back there at the end of the shop. Can't see it because of the sun, but there's a transmission jack, and I'm going to try to center it and go to town. So that's our plan of attack. What I need to highlight though right now is, how do you get the tank released? Well, since we're over here, this is where we're going to start, and there's something special about this truck. It's an off-road. As best I know, every truck would have this galvanized heat shield, right? I think it's just sort of maybe like speed clips or something. Doesn't look too crazy. I don't think it has to come off, but I don't know if it extends past the bottom of the tank, and we will want it off. We'll know that shortly. And the straps that hold the tank on, it's kind of like a hockey stick style. It plugs in on the exterior side of the frame rail. This side has a bolt, and if I bring you down, I can no longer see anything. So if you see, I can't really do this by myself, but see the gold looking thing? I keep trying to get the camera to focus, and I can't with the light. You gotta realize this is like inches away from my nose at this point in time. So right there, I'm focusing on it. There's a shiny silver head of a bolt. That's something we're gonna talk about, but what's actually holding the strap is a nut on that bolt or stud coming down. Okay, so right here where the light is, this thing, that's the nut that we need to get off that would drop the strap that holds the tank. And you're thinking like, well, hey, this looks like a tank strap, dummy. Well, yeah, that's a good assumption there, but this is actually the fuel tank skid plate. So most trucks aren't going to have this. If it's four-wheel drive, if it has a skid plate, some upgraded package. In this case, this truck is an off-road. That's one of the things they added. If you're like, well, what's a skid plate? It's this thing, this long, not hit my head on anything, hopefully, but like this is the tank, and it disappears inside the skid plate. Okay, so most of you aren't going to have to contend with the skid plate. Skid plate looks to be plastic or fiberglass or something, and I don't think it's going to be heavy, but it could be. I've had antifreeze bust out in gallon jugs in the back of the bed. I don't know if some of it's sitting in here, so we'll have to be leery of that, but it just kind of drains down, right? So the way this is set up, the skid plate, we're going to have that bolt head there, the silver one, okay? And then it looks like it's riveted. I can't really get the camera in place, but all these little fasteners, I think, are sort of like just little studs or rivets that go up to that steel strap. And then over here on this side, this is again the bracket, so that's what we just looked at, that we're going to have to take a bolt down, and then it's riveted to the skid plate, which, let me back up and give you an overview of that thing. So this piece at the bottom all the way down, that is our skid plate. Okay, on this side, this bracket that we think holds the skid plate comes up, and it has two bolts here, okay, 1 and 2. So our first order of business is actually to drop the skid plate. And that's not all. You have to come down here because, as you might have guessed, this is a long span, and I'm stuck completely on the camera strap now. And right here, if I get you up there, you can see the bracket. If it looks like I sprayed WD-40, totally have in preparation of this. Suggest you do the same. Bolt heads look clean. That should be the same setup there. And then coming back under the truck, you might have guessed it. You know, we're stuck. Okay, so right here, this is going to be the rear, or towards the tailgate, however you want to orient it. Once we get that off, and this one off, and the 4 bolts on the frame rail side, I think we're going to be okay. I think the skid plate will drop. Then we can look at this heat shield, because right now I can't tell if it extends past the point of the bottom of the tank or not. The fuel pump itself is right up here. So basically your straps, if you have this heat shield, or the, not heat shield, but the skid plate, or you want to add one, factory mounting points are right here. Both of them are directly in line with your tank straps, okay? You'll see those better when we get this out, but kind of centrally located, almost in the middle, you'll have like access to the pump right here. I'm not going to go up there with you. I've got too much stuff here near my head. But, those are connections we're going to get to. But right now, in the case of this truck with the skid plate, we've got to get the skid plate off. So that's what I'm going to do. I believe, I cannot see the head of the bolts earlier. I can't tell if that's, I think that's just a maker's mark. It's probably 13 millimeter, but half an inch fit better, so I'm just going to roll with that. And it is a crazy, crazy reach. You got two options. If you're running a big impact, you'll want to have a long extension to come up here, just like the light is doing. And otherwise, you can fit a hand ratchet or a battery ratchet up tight against that with shorter sockets. So I'm going to do that. For my safety, I will grab the transmission jack and I'll try to position it. I've also got to get that box of antifreeze out of the way. But I'm trying to walk you through this as best I can. And like I said, not everyone's going to have to contend with the skid plate. If you do, or if you want to add one, you know, this is what the factory did. So if you go to a wrecking yard and you find an off-road or something, maybe 3/4 tons with short tanks had them, this is how the factory mounted them. So it seems fairly robust, but we're going to start breaking these bolts free, see what we get into. Alright, so vertical bolts I saved for last, did the 4 on the frame rail first. It looks like there's either attaching points or that thing's doing its job and centered really good for this. This is much easier to center in the event that it doesn't have 13 gallons of fuel in it, right? So, I'm gonna snake over here. These glasses fog up so bad. It's important you have safety glasses just so crud doesn't get in your eyes, right? But let's see here. Trying to think which way I was going. Oh, wrong way. Oh man. Okay, so this should come down. I might have to ditch the camera if it's starting to spill. Okay, so I've got to abandon you, but you can see what's happening here. It looks like anything that's in it has either dried out or it's all on this side. And these glasses fog so bad I can't see anything out of them. But down there we either hung up on something, maybe there's like a line or something, and I'll get that freed, but it looks like this is going to drop down. I'll kind of get you an idea on the weight. Don't think it should be that bad, but very beefy brackets on them. So we'll get this out. We wanted to note the paint stampings here, 112.8 or 821.1, whatever it is. We want to remember that faces the front of the truck, so just in the event this thing gets flipped or turned around or something stupid. So there she is coming down. I'll go get it freed from whatever it's hung on and we'll take a look at it. Alright, so here is the skid plate for the fuel tank, removed from the truck. All I've done is slide it out and forward to get it out of my way so I could get out. Can't exit on the passenger side back there. So what we have, it's equilateral braces here at the front. This is another way if you happen to flip it or have trouble or wonder, you can keep it straight. Equilateral braces at the front. Note that the inboard ones are going to have the 90-degree turn. That's where I have that fastener flip, obviously would thread in the reverse direction. These two, there's going to be 3 holes on the frame rail side. Granted, there are there too. On the main thing, just to note, this one has the 90-degree turn and this one does not for vertical mounting. It's fairly clean. Most of that debris and mess is again from antifreeze jugs that busted. A couple of gallons burst as well. Over here on the rear, okay, so front side you're going to have this like raised lip, again where that writing is, paint pen from the factory. Coming back down, you get to a point and these are offset. So your vertical inboard mount is offset from the frame rail mount. That's important to note. Also, just the curvature and the overall shape will kind of help you keep tabs on it. What I'm going to do is spray this down, and then I'm going to take that same cleaner and I'm going to hit the fill hose and the vent or the turn line, and we're going to kind of clean those up. They looked pretty clean, in all honesty, but I don't want anything falling down in the tank. Even though we're going to take it out and clean it, it's just good practice. And I can tell you right now, everything's going smooth aside from the safety glasses fogging up. If someone could ever actually make safety glasses that don't fog, oh, it would be a big seller. But, I think it also looked like those long studs were going to have 15s on them or something. It looks just, I think it's bigger than the 13 that we use. So I'm going to go ahead and check that out, start cleaning, and then I'll take you under the truck with me. Alright, so I didn't have a light over here. I didn't realize how dirty this was until I started scrubbing, so that screws that little montage over. But it is important because if you look across here, and across the frame rail, and across the tank there, I have gone ahead while it is elevated and started cleaning, and that's in part because we've cleaned this up, okay? This is important that we disconnect this. There's a couple schools of thought. You can come in, you can open your gas cap, the lid I should say, the fuel door, whatever you want to call it. There would be, I believe, they're Phillips screws, and you could take that down and you could just drop it with it. In my opinion, it makes more sense, since we're taking the tank down, to just go ahead and undo these clamps. Far one, the thicker one, that's going to be, of course, our fill tube, and then that, I don't know if it's a vent or a return line. I can't really tell where it's going, but anyway, I've cleaned that up really well right here. I mean, that looks brand new. It's pretty impressive. Over there, the rubber, I've cleaned it up as well, and these are just little gearworm clamps. I think they're only slotted, so my advice would be use a nut driver. And then right here, what I plan to do is come in with a black Sharpie and denote where the factory had this hose at. I'm going to do the same thing here, and then I don't know if you can tell, but you can sort of feel where the pipe terminates, right? And so I'll probably use like a silver Sharpie in this area. The only reason I'm doing that, you don't have to do it, I just kind of want to have the same setback as the factory. I can get this on, I can get it secure, but I want to slide it up as good as I can, just like the factory did, so we for sure don't have any leaks or vapors, or, you know, if we do, we followed what the factory did. So anytime you have OE stuff, denote it, mark it, label it, make use of it to your advantage, and that's what I intend to do. So essentially, we'll break these free. I don't know if I can where are they? I don't know which one I grabbed. I think I got the 5/16. I did. Of course, these are in idiotic positions here. It's not 5/16. It's not 5/16. Let's see if I can work the miracle and get the one that I wanted. Here we go. Much slimmer handle. They're going to be, are they? Or are they metric? You're kidding me. Did I not grab quarter? That's totally quarter. Huh? Is that a freaking metric clamp? You gotta be kidding me. Let me come back to 5/16. That's way too big. Huh. Yeah, well, shoot. I guess that's a metric clamp. That's crazy. So we might get to bust out some new tools and just use a flat blade. But yeah, just there's going to be one on each. Just standard, nothing fancy gearworm clamps. After we mark it, we'll break those free. We'll use hose picks to slide that off. And then if I take you back over here, let's grab the light. Okay, so this is what was hidden. Okay, this little boss here where you can tell something was bolted up. That was our skid plate bracket with a vertical mount here on the inboard side. And this right here, the long bolt or stud coming through, that looks to be a 15mm nut. So that's what we're going to use. And it's literally, there's that one, and there is that one. Man, this is a big tank when you're on your back. So that's it. That's all that holds it up. So where do you see these galvanized straps, sort of where this heat shield recesses, that's literally all that is supporting your tank. In terms of this heat shield being attached to the tank, note that it is behind your galvanized strap. Okay, so you got your strap, you got the heat shield, and then you've got the tank. There's also these two little speed nuts or speed clips, and they seem to only be on this rearmost side right towards the rear axle. So strange there's none that I can see anywhere up here. And I point that out to you because if I take you back here, I can't get you good angles with this massive camera. The heat shield, it follows the contour, but coming down you could crimp it. You could kind of crush it a little bit. Might be smart to work it off. You might not have that chance depending on the weight and the fuel, but it is worth noting. And then, let's see, there's some connections and fuel lines in here. We might be able to work that loose, but we'll probably have to try to sit up and find some things. But my initial thoughts are, get the transmission jack, get a board, and kind of softly lower this, like maybe halfway down. And I don't know if it'll fit coming out from under the truck or not. It might. But coming halfway down, then we will deal with all of the electrical and fuel line connections that we'll have on top of the tank. So I know you don't have good angles here. I don't either. This is a huge camera. It's just super awkward for me. So I'm going to set this up and try to break this stuff free. Alright, it is a little dark, but we have removed the gearworm clamps on both sides. Just had to use a slotted there, something smaller than 8, maybe like a 7 or a 6. Not really sure. 1/4, 5/16 neither work, so we went slotted. Went ahead right on each pipe that we pre-cleaned. I marked with a Sharpie. Then down here where the fitment ends, basically where the barbed end of the hose is, we hit it with a paint marker. Tried a silver Sharpie, it just really wasn't working that well. But you'll probably get a better view of that here in a little bit. I got every light I own charging. Outside of the little Astra that I was trying to leave in place to mark something. But that is taken care of, and now if I take you over here, again, I think it's the 15mm that we need here and here. So you'll need a deep socket for that. Looks like there's quite a bit of thread on both ones. And then if I try this, it's too dark. I gotta get a light under here for you. I don't really think we can see anything though, so I'm gonna get some lighting and we'll take a look at it. But I'm gonna basically pry those hoses off, use a little hose spoon for that, and then we'll come in, we'll grab that transmission jack, we'll get a piece of plywood. I mean, this is it's a long tank, so the transmission jack's awesome, but I mean, it's basically going to go from like here to here, and the tank goes from, you know, here to here. So the more we can do to center it, the better off we'll be. Again, 78 pounds, roughly what I'm guesstimating the lightest it could be is. We can bench press that, no issues. You can hold it in this position fine. It's just if you don't hold it perfectly square, which it would be very hard to do on a creeper or your side, if this tilts just a little bit off, you know, perfectly parallel, all that fuel is going to run down, and that's going to make it super awkward and imbalanced. And then even though you can handle the weight, you're not going to be able to handle the weight shifting. You're not going to be able to move this hand all the way to grab that end and vice versa. So having 2 people would be advisable, but I think we're going to just try to get it done, and, you know, if she drops, she drops, and hopefully we're not under it. If it is, as long as it doesn't hit us in the head, we're probably okay. Definitely wear safety glasses of some sort, though, and we'll see what happens. Alright, so here we are again, another day. Keep kind of getting interrupted, and then last night, the reason I didn't go ahead and drop this, I wanted the door cracked. If I have that door up and it's dark, we get inundated with everything that flies and all sorts of little beetles, and it just wasn't worth it. So the only thing I did that I don't know if we showcased or not, I'll get you a light this time, is we got that marked. The silver Sharpie wasn't showing up. We used an orange paint pen, have it marked there, and then I also broke them free. So the little Lyle hose spoons worked really good for that. And we should be home on that front. Now if I do this, like you can kind of see up there, there's just not head space. Maybe if you had kids you could force to work for you, but for an adult there's just not space there. So coming around, if I position myself just right, which is kind of hard to do with the camera, it's much easier with that one, I'll just hold it up here. So that's the fuel pump, okay? And if it looks like there's half of an inch or so between the top of the fuel pump module and the bed, that would be correct, because that's exactly what there is. So we have all those lines, and there's an electrical connector somewhere. I kind of think it must face out on the driver's side. I think I'm going to have to lower the tank to have access to that stuff. I can kind of see it. I could disconnect the lines, but I don't know if I could do much else, so it makes sense to go ahead and lower it. So right here again, I believe we need our 15 millimeter. I've got the Hercules set up with that ginormous extension on there, because it's a long way up there. It looks short from here, but I mean, like this vantage point here, that's why we've got a 10-inch extension there. So it's just that bolt and that bolt. We're obviously working with a nut. You'll need a deep 15. Once we get that sort of lowered down, I may not take the nuts off all the way. I want to see if I can still use that, but we're going to slide the transmission jack over to support it, because again, we're working solo here. And I don't really see anywhere else that holds the heat shield aside from A, the strap, B, the second strap, and C, those two speed nuts. I've traced these lines. We cannot see anything back there, and there's like no real good disconnects here. This line though, and that's the big line by the fill, that's going to be our vent for sure. I checked it out. This right here actually runs over to this canister setup, and we could potentially disconnect that if we wanted to, but right now I just kind of want to drop it and get a visual on it. Note where my foot is down there. When this thing comes down, it takes up a lot of space, so you kind of have to think ahead. But main thing, you know, for our safety, and if you're doing this the way I'm doing it, the drive shaft is a friend. The drive shaft will keep that from crushing me over here or knocking me in the head really hard. So we'll transmission jack it, we'll get a piece of plywood. I think that's about all we need to do. In my case, the truck's been down, it's hadn't run in forever, right? So I don't think we have any pressure bleed. It's a new engine. I've turned the key on to monitor the voltage here, but I don't think we like turned it on, you know? So it shouldn't have primed the pump. There could be pressure there. You would want to bleed that off at the Schrader valve on the fuel rail. Otherwise, you'll kind of get like a squirt in the face here, which wouldn't be pleasant. But I would recommend safety glasses, goggles, headwear, whatever you need to do. I'm going to actually try the goggles out. The safety glasses constantly fog over on me, so I'll give the goggles time to do the same. That's it. So our little impact 15 millimeter, we're going to ease that on down. Might even break it free and then just spin her by hand if we can support the weight a little bit. And I'll kind of update you as I can. So once again, all the action will be up here. It's all kind of on the other side, which is a shame. It's a real shame. If they would have had that flipped, you know, all the connections facing out towards the passenger side, you might, you know, get some more work done. But anyway, that's what we're going to do, and I'll update you. All right, so I don't want to jump too far ahead, but that's my little setup. 1/2-inch drive extension there is for our ratchet, which we're using to kind of quickly move up and down if we need to adjust on the fly. You'll note did exactly what I told you I would do. I've got that backed out quite a bit, but not all the way off. Same thing down there if you can see it. And what we have working for us is that piece of wood and the transmission jack. I tried to center the transmission jack. Piece of wood's a little too wide in my opinion, but should get the job done. So now, I can't really film this, but what I'm going to do is take my ratchet and connect there and start to lower this thing down. I'm going to have that as sort of like a predetermined stop. That way I won't go too low and strain anything. I'm hoping then I can kind of skate over into this gap and we'll have a better view of what's going on up there. Maybe see some stuff to disconnect. And the safety glasses fog over just as fast as the safety glasses. So it is what it is. But yeah, kind of lower this thing down, see what we can do. Alright, so that wasn't working too well, so the next course of options is jack this back up, put the weight of the tank on that, and we've now got a situation where if I do this, I can just spin this off by hand, right? This is no longer holding anything. So same thing on the back. I'm going to take those nuts off. I don't want the camera under here with me when I do it. So we should have all of the weight supported by that thing. It does kind of seem like the back of the tank might be holding more weight. We'll kind of, I'll play with it and try to figure it out, and then I'll just update you as whatever happens, happens. Alright, invited some friends over. That's our long reach Daytona. And if you can tell, we're dropping down. We're getting better access. So currently what I'm doing is I'm trying to get the tank down to the level of the Daytona. Again, we're doing that by turning this. And I'm hoping that gives me enough space to get my head up in there and also stabilize it. So watch the tank. And that's not a reassuring sound, so I'm going to inspect this, but this is kind of the process. Again, it would be helpful if you had some other people, but gotta do what you gotta do. And here we are again. Super late start tonight, but there's a little bit of daylight left. Got home relatively early, and then this massive rainstorm came with some crazy wind, so couldn't really get out of here. I wound up eating supper, then it cleared, and here we are. So where I left off last night before all the spiders started running in on me under the door, we have the Daytona in the rear, just kind of for support. The tank constantly seemed to be tilting back. I don't quite understand why, but we've shifted everything that direction. And what we've got going on now is we've got access to the fuel pump. Everything faces the driver's side, so where the camera is, where my hand is, where I'm at, I'm on the passenger side. Everything important faces the driver's side, which makes it just kind of a pain in the butt. But I've got my little man calendar photo shoot material here, which is old carpet. And we're going to use it to crawl up under there, and I'm going to just kind of survey around. I shot some WD-40 trying to kind of like loosen dirt and clean stuff up last night. If we can pull the red lock tab off the electrical connector, we'll have one behind us. I think there's a vent or evap connection, and then we've got the main fuel line, which if we look over here, that's what I'm kind of hoping for. So I've got, these are actually hose puller pliers. I'm kind of hoping they squeeze the tabs and can pull a hose. I've got some little dolphin nose from VHA, and just standard, these are the antifreeze dipped pliers that always slip out of my hand, even though I clean them with brake cleaner. And we're going to see if we can accomplish anything. So if my phone won't ring and I don't have to get interrupted and spiders don't come under the door, this should have some progress made. Alright, well, that was a long, awkward deal, and after this, Contortionist is officially on my resume, because I didn't spend all this time here. This is when I slid to get the camera. I was up here, where you see that dusted. That was dusted with my hair. So I've kind of been scrunched up here, and I worked that off. And the reason for it, that goes up here to the, what would you call that, frame connector. Runs over there, and it essentially looks like, yes, this side right here that you're looking at will need to be disconnected before we remove the fuel pump module, but that line essentially runs all the way over here. This just kind of tees off and runs out to the canister. This goes back into the tank, so this has to come off, and my thoughts are I'm going to deal with that when the tank is down and easier to mess with. So the pliers were freaking awesome for this. They're just little hose pullers. I'm gonna try to get you up here so I can see what we're talking about, but this connector, again, that's the one that we're gonna deal with on the ground. We don't have to worry about it. That Gearworm clamp, that's actually the vent line. Note that it is positioned on the forward side of what we're just going to call this frame connector. Alright, the big thick dirty thing you're looking at, there's like the black vent line, and then there's like a dirty looking piece. That's a rubber hose. That is your fill tube. Okay, it is on the tailgate side of this cross member. So when you raise this up, or if you disconnect it here, or whatever you do, the way this was oriented from the factory, we're going to have vent, front side of the cross member, fill tube, rear side of the cross member. And again, the way I did it, just disconnecting where we did earlier, those will just both slide down and forward. So when we push this back up, assuming we don't replace the hoses, we'll clean them, and we want them oriented in the same manner. Now, this line right here, it basically runs along this. My wrist doesn't bend backwards to show you any better. Man, the camera's so big. Considered getting a GoPro for this stuff. Just so I could like get it in weird places. But back there, kind of in the shadowy regions, there are two things. There's an electrical connector, and there's our fuel line. At least those are the two things I know of. I can see the red tab on the electrical connector, and I've pulled it with the little VHA dolphin nose. The thing is, I don't know if I'm pulling it the right way or not. I sort of feel a lip on both sides, which is a problem, because usually you would just pull it to the side with the lip. Not the other, but this feels like there's a slight rise on both ends. So again, if you're able somehow to see this from the driver's side, you would have a way better time. But with me, I'm here and I'm going to try to make this work. So I'm going to figure that out and I'll walk you through it. But this is what that looks like. I don't like plastic lines. I don't deal with them often. I just think they're going to break, but this worked really, really well. I'll have part numbers for you if I remember at the end of the video or in the description. But yeah, that's disconnected. Again, we'll disconnect that absolutely, but when it's down because it's easier. So those two connectors back there on the other side, that's what we're going to work with now. All right, this is the best I can do. My head is here. I'm inches from the camera. That is the connector. So again, I'm on the passenger side. That tab, turns out, the way this is oriented from the factory, I don't know if you have an adapter harness or not, but on a factory installation on this 01 Ram, we go to the rear. So I was able to sort of feel it a little bit better, and I just started pushing, and from this side that I was originally trying to pull to towards the front, going that way, I just started pushing and I heard it click and I thought, sweet. And then through this gap I could see the connector body and I just pushed and I got lucky and she slid right off. So electrical connection taken care of. That leaves us with the fuel line, and it is like impossible. Let me try not to hit my schnoz on the drive shaft there. It's in that dark hole. Let me, you're gonna look at something, I don't know what. All right, man, this is just not working for you. For me, I can see it. Now my glasses are fogged over, but there's a connector. It's like blue, aquamarine, green, teal, something, and it shows up really well, but the camera doesn't pick it up. So gonna quit wasting our time. That's what I'm gonna work with. You'll see it when it's disconnected. All right, it kind of sucks because I'm out here and I see how dirty I've gotten the camera, but something that if we weren't interrupted all the time, we probably would have done. I don't know how much merit there is to this. I've already keyed it out. Take the gas cap off. Now, a lot of times you see people and their gas cap filler areas are filthy. Clean them. Don't. And I'm not talking about like a little dust and dirt, you know, this has been sitting a while, but like spider webs, wasp nests, dirt clods, kind of stuff that's going to fall down and basically go into your gas. You don't want that, so be clean. That said, I just started shimmying with our old, hose puller pliers, and I kind of heard some pressure venting. Before I foolishly, kept going and forced it off, I thought, just to be safe, we should probably do this. Now, I think I mentioned it. If I did not, you would always want to go to your manifold fuel rails and you bleed the pressure with a Schrader valve. We're in a unique situation. That motor's gone. We've got the 408. It's not been fired in here. If there's any pressure in here, it would be residual. And this would have been open air for some time, obviously. Pull the 5.2, we had everything disconnected. There could still be pressure built. I'm not quite sure. I've not looked at the pump module or anything, so it could be internal type of a deal that we're about to contend with. This will just provide a little bit of relief, and we do have the vent off. We've had the filler line open, so you would think like pressure could bleed off, but again, it could be something internal. So just play it safe. This is where you'd want your gloves and safety goggles and all that stuff. And the good news for me, I'm on the passenger side doing all this, so the jet would be shooting it this way. So that might be my saving grace, but you're probably going to have it leak out. Again, safety equipment, rags, towels. Obviously, if you've got like an old school incandescent work light, that's cool. Keep rocking it. Don't in this case. That's a heat source, and anything you can do to prevent yourself and your truck going up in a literal, blaze of glory, do it now. So this is one of those times. Seems stupid. The same thing, like if you're wrenching in your garage at your house and it's rained like it did here today and you push the truck in or something, be mindful if you're doing this in the wintertime, there's a pilot light, anything like that. It sounds dumb, it sounds far-fetched, but then every once in a while you hear of the story or read of a story or know someone that it happened to or they had a friend that it happened to. Take precautions, be safe. You've got one life. This is not a good way to go. So, save yourself for something a little bit more epic or cool or timely. In this case, just be safe, be efficient, think, don't rush, and just play it safe. So I'm going to get back under there with a bunch of rags just in case, and then we're going to come down and hopefully be able to drop the tank. Have it ready. I have a crud ton of my little Sunoco Jugs. These guys right here beside me. That's oil, the VP one. There's a Mr. Gasket somewhere up there. But these are the ones I kind of like the best. They seem to be the best quality. That one's not bad. I just kind of like the handle on this one better. But I've got like 3 of them coming tomorrow to hold all this. Don't worry, we'll dispose of it. Main reason I say not to worry, I love those jugs. I use fuel all the time. It's going to be sweet once the truck's running. I can go and get fuel. I'm talking like good stuff, if you will, for the old cars. So we'll take care of that. But that's another story, another day. Right now, safety equipment, rags, towels, old socks, whatever, just be prepared for fuel. And hopefully now that we've preached for so long, we won't have much of a mess. If I just rushed in, we'd probably have a huge mess. Now with this sermon, maybe it'll just be like a slight trickle. But again, I did hear it and I thought, oh, I don't know if I, popped the cap. So play it safe and let's get back to work. And with a little time and patience, you will reign supreme as well. So those pliers were indispensable in this, particularly from this angle, but we disconnected the vent, we disconnected the electrical line. That gave me space to actually come in with the hose puller pliers and kind of fish it, I guess, between that boss for the electrical harness, and it sort of planted the pliers. If we had a stubby version of those, it would just be really, really cool. Maybe even like one with like different angled heads. I'm going to go in and scan KC Tool tonight and see what all they offer. But that popped free. I think as I come up here, everything's taken care of. So you still can't see that really well over there, but you'll see it when it comes out. So the glare's up here. The head of the pliers, and then you see that black thing looking at us with something steel or bronze colored. That's the factory fuel line. The clip is coming off, I guess, of the pressure regulator there. It's got the blue thing on it, which is just like this gray one, just blue, probably different size as well. I had to get the Klein light going so I could kind of see back in there a little bit better. And as best I can see, everything is disconnected. So and there was not much fuel that came out. It's kind of, I guess, much to do about nothing. I'm sure if you could get it off in one whack, it might squirt a little. But truth be told, you're probably going to struggle with that, and it's just going to dribble a little bit. This rag here, you wouldn't even know it was wet. Same with the one that I had plugged in over there. But what we're going to do now is make use of these. So we've got the transmission jack sort of mid-front. And this one's almost at the end. I'd say we have like a little past a hand length or so there where that's sitting. It worked really well last night, kind of, shimmying that around. So I'm just going to start lowering and see what we do. I can't really film it, but it's pretty simple. You lower your floor jack, you lower this one. Obviously, you'd want to go in unison. The other thing I need to do is this strap is free. The back one, this one is too. It's just caught on the drive shaft. There's like no space there, so the little head that you see there nested over like a snake, we're gonna hit that down. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that out of the way. Then it should swing over. We might actually have to crawl to the other side and get these out. There's just like a slotted keyway in the frame rail over there, and after that we should be ready to drop it. So I'm gonna quit rambling and make that happen. Alright, so some new friends came out and basically use the 12-inch pry bar to push that strap down. I didn't want to take a chance getting my hand caught up in there. So that is the front strap. The rear strap is back there on that piece of wood. there's absolutely nothing that would impede this thing from going down that I'm aware of. So now we can finally lower this thing. We'll do a little bit at the front, a little bit at the rear, rinse and repeat. It should be fairly heavy, being about half a tank, but we'll ultimately probably get it off the jack in the rear, slide that jack out, and then kind of have it tilted down like this on the transmission jack. I can either come in and try to lift and get that out from under, or I'll just use that to sort of like dolly it around. My hope is that the truck sits up high enough that the tank will just kind of slide out somewhere. So that remains to be seen, but yeah, I'll kind of show you those mounts. I mean, let me try. I'm gonna say I'd show you when we reinstall it. It's kind of just a pain to see them, but there's a spot. Let me reposition here. Right there, the closest thing to us. You just cannot get a good angle on that stuff, but it's what I'm covering, and it's uncovered. There's like a slot, it's a keyway, and it's kind of just, it's real simple, but it's sort of a pain to get it lined up and come down just right, especially when you're afraid something might crush you. But like I said, it's pretty easy. I think I can showcase it better when the tank is out and we reinstall, so be on the lookout for that one. But for now, we're ready to lower it, and I might be able to get inside and actually have accomplished something, and that'll be a good feeling. Definitely tilting towards the drive shaft. Gotta make sure everything's free, and might push it back over the other direction. Well, that is that. That's how you get your fuel tank out, I will tell you. This was way taller in the back than I imagined. It's not even going to be able to go under the rear axle, which is what I plan to do. I've got some crud on that side. To get out, I don't know that it would slide. You know, the drive shaft tapers like that. It goes forward angle up towards the transfer case, if you will, so maybe it would slide under if I were to drag it this way. Man, I am about to a stopping point tonight. I'm sweating bullets out here, super hot. To put the door down. Got notice there's like loose Dobermans or something. I had the door up so to let a breeze in. But that's that. So got the jack out, got the transmission jack out. May or may not have been graceful, but it worked. So again, on this truck, which is an off-road, we have the skid plate on the fuel tank. So that's what that is. Again, we've got it oriented the way we took it out. I've just cleaned it a little bit. We're going to do like more cleaning, of course. But coming around over here, there's our transmission jack, the little Hazette, the fuel straps, front and rear. I was just starting to slide it out this way. Obviously, I've got crud in the floor blocking the path, so I may have to move that, but I gotta go to the bathroom, man. I tanked down on some tea during that storm, and probably should have stopped working a little bit ago, but I made myself continue on. So there she blows. That is the tank with 13 to 15 gallons. So it's a 26-gallon tank on this truck, and not terribly heavy. I so wish that I had a spare moving dolly. I have a ton of them, but I've got them, you know, everything like heavy. So might grab another one of those. I don't know, but right now I legitimately got to get inside, man. But what we're gonna do next is get the tank out. We're gonna go over how to remove the fuel pump assembly. We're gonna clean the tank. We're gonna replace the assembly. We're gonna reinstall it. I think reinstallation will be a better video. So by the time you see this, if you're DIY type, might check that one out too. I think it'll be able to highlight everything better. It's amazing how simple all this would be if you had access to it. So right there, this one, kind of the one facing us, that is the factory fuel line. This is going to be the evap that runs up along that cross member over to this. We'll pan back out. Again, it basically tucks in through the frame rail here, runs across that cross member. That confirms what I told you. That's the only one we have to disconnect. Coming way back there, that big one, my fingers underneath, that is your fill line, okay? The next one beside it that you cannot see, that would be the vent. So those go back to the tank. I guess I can come up in here and show you. Alright, so again, the big guy right there, that is going to be your fill, and then the one angled off to the side that's much smaller, vent. This is the electrical connector. So once again, this is how it's oriented from the factory. It's going to be a situation where that clip is going to slide towards your tailgate. So if you're doing this like I am from the passenger side, that's your point of attack. It'll go that way. It'll go that direction too, of course, if you're on the passenger side, I mean driver's side. But just left hand, right hand type of a deal. There is the vent coming, can't really see it that well, but coming out of the tank, going down. There's the T, that's what we disconnected with the gray. That spins around over to fuel pump assembly. Where that blue rag is, that is where you would see a similar fitting to what we have in gray. Plugs into that factory fuel line. And this gives me a lot of opportunity here. And I just noticed something kind of interesting. I was going to tell you, this gives me a lot of opportunity to clean, which it does. This is what, like right there where it's the cleanest, yeah, that was where my head was that entire time. So if you're curious about my point of attack, that's what we did. And then that, of course, is the wall of the cab. We'll clean that up real good. There's where I put my Astro. That worked out really well. Just kind of bolted up right there with a magnet. Shine a light on the entire work area. Worked pretty good for me. But what I'm seeing, there's a harness, okay? Pay attention to the fuel one. When you come in, you see that barcode. It's got a number 517 that's upside down. That runs back towards the back of the truck. We tee off to the rear axle and probably like your tail lights and everything. Backup light assembly. There is coiled over what I would think to be an awful lot of slack. Kind of right there. That convoluted tubing that's kind of bundled over on itself in a snake shape. That means there would be the potential to extend. I guess what that is, this harness must also work for long beds. And I guess it would just, you know, you literally have like more frame rail here, so maybe that's what it is. But for us short box people, you could conceivably cut those cable ties or tape down there and extend that out and maybe lower this to the ground. Like, we're pretty close. I mean, obviously it would yank the snot out of that, and then this would be your stopping point. But there are ways I think you could maybe make that work. In terms of disconnecting your fuel line anywhere, no, it would have to be at the manifold. Like, you literally, you come out of there and we just run all the way down that frame rail. So I think where it would have a connection point is up towards the engine bay. So there's no like disconnect over here. That would be super handy if you could just like come in middle ground here where there's nothing and had access to all that, or there was like a service window in the frame rail type of a thing. But it is what it is. This is easy stuff. It's just not easy to get to it, and that's what makes it difficult. The actual procedure you'll have no trouble with. Same thing, like these, that's annoying because you don't know what side the tab goes to because you can't see it. These two are annoying because it's plastic connectors, but truth be told, like if you had those on a bench in front of you, you'd be fine. It's just you can't see, you can't work, you're tight, you're confined. The front, I'm gonna get my elbow back. Where would she be? Somewhere up in there. I'm blocking the light. Well, I'll show you this one. I had it and I lost it right here. Okay, that thing that looks like a big capital T, that is your rear tank strap. So that strap that's sitting, was on the piece of wood, it is on the piece of wood behind that Gador kneeling mat. You can't really tell detail, but when you reinstall this, the big end goes there and then it drops down into the keyhole that keeps it in place. Somewhere on this frame rail, if we had the light moved or my head wasn't here, the tank is not that dirty really, so that's good. I still don't quite understand what's going on, how that heat shield's held on back here. We'll figure that out. But that's it, man. There's, again, a good look at that vent setup. If I can focus the camera for you. Again, keep in mind, my head is literally on the underside of the bed here. It's not a comfortable spot to be. But where that Y's off, again, vent line comes right where it's pointed to this side of that cross member. Fill line goes to the rear of this evap deal. There's the clips. It runs on that cross member. Bear with me. I'm gonna do my best to educate you. It's the best I know how. I cannot find my climb, so we're gonna grab this guy. So it's running along this cross member, okay? It turns and goes to the frame rail here. It's this little black line. If you follow it, it disappears right there through a grommet. Where does that grommet take you? To the canisters. So that's what that line does. Again, disconnect from the top only, and then you can deal with that later. This stud right here coming out of that cross member, 15 millimeter socket, that'll take your nut off. The rear one, where in the world is it? Oh wait, that is the rear one, my bad. I'm way back here, and then the front one is up this direction. So that front, since we did all this, I'm going to show you the front gas tank strap. But again, you'll see all that when we do it. There's the harness I was talking about snaked over. It's weird not having to worry about the gas tank falling on me currently. I'm hugging the drive shaft. And so I think I've had enough. I think it's time to get in. So that's what we'll be dealing with here pretty soon. We're going to clean it up and make it look good, make it perform like new for the 408, and I'll take you along for the ride. So like I said, yes, you can absolutely lift the bed. In some cases, if you've got the space, the gantry crane would make that a cakewalk. If you have a lift, also a similar thing. If you have an engine hoist, it wouldn't be that bad of a job just to change the pump. Now, what we're doing and why we dropped it, we have, again, 13, half a tank or more, you know, like somewhere probably like 3/5 of a tank, more likely, in this thing. And that's old. It's not a good fuel blend that we get anymore at the pumps. I need that out. I don't want to run that old gas through a brand new engine. So we're going to evacuate it. We're going to pump it out with the transfer pump that we built. And then we're also, since we have to take the pump out to get to it, we're just going to replace that mainly for the filter. Yes, it is 20 plus years old, but also the filter. I'm interested in getting that set up in the future. After we've cleaned the tank and rehung it and filled it with fresh fuel and everything, if we have the fuel pump go out, it'll be a deal where, yes, we're probably going to raise the bed. But right now, we dropped it because we need to get the fuel out, and we're going to clean the tank. So again, if you do drop your tank to replace a pump, my advice, clean it. Like, run it down, or, you know, have some way of evacuating the fuel, save it, put it in the mower, put it back in the truck. But clean your tank. It's the least you can do. You know, it's one of those things, the sediment that comes from the fuel, if you've ever accidentally filled up, you know, and there's stuff swirling around. At this point in time, you know, these trucks 94 to 01, the newest case scenario, it's just what we've got in 01. That's 21 years old. You know, factor in all the mileage and the fill-ups and bad gas. And yeah, it's something you'd want to keep tabs on. So anyway, that's that. I got to get inside. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned a little something. Again, I apologize. I wish I could film this stuff better. Maybe we will grab the GoPro. I've got one. It's just older. It's like a 3, maybe a 4. I got an email today. They have the 11. So yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll do that. Then I could like kind of get the camera up in tight spots and maybe showcase stuff. Well, this is a big camera, and this is tight confines, so it is what it is. But anywho, that is that. We're going to clean it up, take care of everything, just like I told you. I'll walk you through all that. Should be a more user-friendly video, replacing the fuel pump and cleaning the tank, since we'll actually be out, you know, fresh air and space. But right now, bent over like this is not that uncomfortable. The main thing is I could not be in this position with the tank, so I could sit like this a little while. I wouldn't want to do it long, for a little while. And I'll show you some things coming. If our pace setter exhaust doesn't fit, do you see that ear, the super shiny thing coming off the transfer case? that may have to go. I've had a couple of you leave comments. Most people wind up having to clearance that. This is a great time to do that. Like, super good time. I mock up the exhaust before we put this thing back in. Something else I should mention to you. Most of you where I'm at right now are going to have the factory muffler. It's like a 3-foot long crazy oval. And I don't have that. So, you know, it worked out well for me. But that might be why a lot of people come in from the driver's side. I don't really think having the wheel well out would help a ton. I mean, that's a pretty good ways back there, you know, going that direction. So this worked great. You know, if you're wanting to change your exhaust or cut the exhaust or do something, now's the time to, you know, do it. Get over here where I'm at. Have decent access to that. Again, it's so simple, anyone can do it, but it's just getting to it that's really the problem. So I'm gonna quit rambling though. I hope this does help you out. Again, my apologies. It's the best I can do working solo here and filming and lighting, and sometimes I can see great but then the camera doesn't see it, and it's like, man, this was stupid. You just want to make progress. So do the best I can, but like I said, we'll be back. I'll walk you through how to replace the pump, clean the tank, reinstall it. And the reinstallation, maybe we can get like some good shots of where the fuel straps go, the fuel tank braces and everything. So be on the lookout for that. Again, hopefully if you're using this to like help yourself and you like my style or something, I title all the videos exactly what they are. So we'll have fuel pump replacement, cleaning the tank, and we'll installing the gas tank, all that stuff. Check those out before you proceed. Maybe it'll help you, give you some ideas where everything's located, all the tips and tricks that I've learned by doing this myself. And last but not least, these little guys are right here. Let me get the Astro up and out of the way. These were amazing. I cannot recommend them enough for this job, especially coming in from the backside like I did. They're going to be 38, 91, 200. If they've got different versions of these, like where the head is straight and not kicked out at 45, or the head is 90 degrees, I'm going to go buy them. That's how impressed I was. That's how vital those were to helping me get this job done. But that's that, just a 15 millimeter and something to disconnect, maybe a pick tool screwdriver. I did wind up using a pry bar to knock that last strap out, but that's it. Again, gotta go. Get you back for more from the Ram Revival.